Hi, everyone. So I think okay, perfect. Thank you, Emma. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our SimpliVity webinar. I know a lot of you have joined us previously as well in our other webinars. So this is a regular knowledge update that we do with HPE through these webinars. And today's is more special because we are trying to make it locally available for all different languages. So hopefully, fingers crossed, all of this is working for you all, and you've chosen the right language in the app and everything. If any challenges, just let us know. Put it in the chat, the Q&A section, wherever you can, and we will pick that up if you are having any issues. But since no one has highlighted anything, I'm assuming it's all working well. So welcome to our session. Now, I don't want to delay it too long. So I'm Angie, and I manage our partner enablement tool, Tech Data Channel Academy. The reason I'm opening the call is because I just want to let you all know that a lot of your team members who were not able to attend the call, the webinar, and they really want to understand SimpliVity focus topics for today, then we are recording it. We will make it available on demand on our Tech Data Channel Academy. Not just that, there are other SimpliVity webinars that we have done and other HPE content webinars we've done also with Mauro. We've recorded that and they're all available on Channel Academy. So I just wanted to quickly take you through how to access Channel Academy. So let me quickly share my screen with you. Bear with me 2 seconds, making sure that I've got the right page open. So just want to show. So this is Tech Data Channel Academy. So Ruj, if you can put this in the chat section for everyone to access. So make sure that you all have access to Tech Data Channel Academy. So all you have to do is simply click the login register button. So you can access Channel Academy through your InTouch login. So it's a single sign-on for all our partners. All our partners will have InTouch access, so you can simply log in through that. Otherwise, you can have your Channel Academy registration as well. All you have to do is just put in that information. And if you don't, make sure you register and then simply log in and you come to Tech Data Channel Academy. So what I want to show you here is in the Add to Library section, all you have to do is you type HPE and it will take you to the HPE content. You simply click and register. Once you have registered on the HPE content, which means you have access to all of your HPE content, go to the My Library section and you click HPE, and then you simply, for a second, let me just do it here. Apologies, I think some link is broken. But if you go to My Library and you click HPE, because I'm already here, and you search, everything around HPE should come up. This is strange. Why is this not working? So let me just put SimpliVity. We always have that, isn't it? Here you go. So here's all the content on SimpliVity. So once you've registered to HPE content, all the HPE content should show up on your screen. So you've put SimpliVity, and these are all the different content that we have on SimpliVity. So you can see we did a SimpliVity webinar in January as well. So you can access that. We did another SimpliVity webinar with Bob DeVita. We've got access to that as well. And other than that, we've got a lot of other content. So this webinar is going to be recorded and placed over here for you to access. So keep an eye for an email that you will receive from us with the direct link that we will send to you. All you have to do is make sure you're registered on Channel Academy, and then you simply click on the link. It should take you into the content. And then once you're in the content, you simply go to view activities and it will take you into the particular webinar or a learning. And the webinar can come along with other content, which is like your PDFs, your PowerPoints, whatever our presenters will give us. So you can see it's all over here. It's a simple video. All you have to do is you click that and you access it. So that's all I wanted to show you. Make sure that you have access to Tech Data Channel Academy so that you are able to access all HPE content that we have for you on Tech Data Channel Academy. So now without further delay, I will stop sharing and hand it over to our experts, Chuck and Mauro. Chuck, I'll hand it over to you to begin with. You can position the agenda and everything, and then take it from there. Thank you very much. I have one more thing. One very important thing. We have to ask questions. So please, anything that comes to your mind, please don't think it's silly or small or simple. Put it out there. Chuck and Mauro are great. So either of them will pick up. So please ask your questions. Put it on chat. We will make sure every single question is answered. So please do utilize the Q&A part of the webinar. Thank you. Over to you, Chuck.
Perfect, Angie. Hey, that Channel Academy is good stuff. I really like that. So welcome, everybody. My name is Chuck Hooke, and I'm here with my colleague, Mauro Bassani, and we are technology evangelists inside of the Storage Worldwide Channel and Ecosystem group at HPE. We're going to talk today about SimpliVity, but we wanted to take a little bit different approach to this, and I'm going to bring up the agenda here. We're going to talk first about the HCI market and some of the key factors that we're seeing in the HCI market and where the growth is for hyper-converged, and so we'll share some of those numbers. And then I know there's a lot of content about SimpliVity out on all the various pages that HPE sponsors, as well as a number of just a ton of YouTube videos on SimpliVity, how to everything. But we wanted to focus today on some of the things that we really feel are key differentiators for SimpliVity and how they align with where we're seeing the HCI market going. And those differentiators are two-node high availability, and that aligns SimpliVity well, extremely well, with the edge. And we feel at HPE that SimpliVity is unbeatable at the edge as far as the size of the footprint and the number of nodes that we need to achieve high availability. Then we're going to talk a little bit about data protection, the hyper efficiency of SimpliVity. We're going to talk about its built-in natural disaster recovery, or that's built into the product. And then we're going to interweave some use cases into those topics to highlight those value points. We're going to get to the roadmap at the end, and then we have some time for Q&A, but always feel free. The chat button and the Q&A button are available for you to use. We'll be monitoring those throughout the session. So let's jump into it. Let's dig in. First off, when we look at some analysis that Gartner did, we see a pretty strong compounded annual growth rate. That's what CAGR stands for, inside of the hyper-converged appliance market. And SimpliVity fits right into that space. SimpliVity is an appliance. You buy it as a package with all the components in t-shirt-like sizes, small, medium, large, and we can expand SimpliVity by clicking on those appliances into your infrastructure. So we're seeing that market growth with a compounded annual growth rate of 22% from 2018 to 23. So we're right in the middle of that, and that's a report published by Gartner. HP had hired IDC to go through and do a deep dive study on hyperconverged in the marketplace. And if we look at some of the numbers, in 2019, almost 40%, 37% of companies are using hyperconverged in their environment. And by 2020, and this is a little bit dated, another 40% are expecting to adopt hyperconverged in their environment. And why is that? Well, a number of key factors, right? Companies are looking to consolidate their infrastructure stack, right? Make it simpler to manage. They're looking for that simpler management and the collapse of those silos to improve IT staff productivity, okay? And this is specific to Simplivity because these are built-in functions of Simplivity without any additional licensing to improve their data protection methodologies, how we back up, how we restore, how we protect our data across multiple sites. And you may hear that 3-2-1 or that 3-2-1-1 backup methodology be tossed around when we're having conversations about backup, and Simplivity fits right into that. And then finally, to improve operational efficiency. So companies are moving to hyper-converged, and a lot of the use cases are being met with the demand of that explosion on the edge, okay? We're seeing billions of devices hit the edge. We're seeing tons of data being generated at the edge. We know we can't move that data around effectively to be processed back at a central data center, so we're doing a lot of that work at the edge. And if we look at where we're growing, right, specifically, we're seeing edge workloads grow tremendously. And you look at some of the compounded annual growth rate for edge, and we're in at 30%. And I think we can all agree that that's a significant growth in our market, okay? And then the requirements for that, and I'm going to spend a couple of minutes for this on this because I think it's important to understand when we look at the Simplivity product, the key values of the Simplivity product, and we look at the roadmap work that's being done with Simplivity, we align really good or really well with these customer requirements, right? We want to be able to capture and process data at the edge. We want local resiliency. We want to be able to protect our assets at the edge with very little touch, okay? And we'll explain some of that, how that works inside of Simplivity. We want this frictionless deployment, right? I want to set and forget my data center in a box. I want high availability in the smallest possible footprint because I'm placing these sometimes in manufacturing facilities or offices with remote offices with very few persons in them. And I want that footprint to be small. I need it to be secure, and I need to have some sort of intelligence built into it that predicts and alerts me when things are starting to go wrong in my environment or when I can have potential problems inside of my environment. So I'm going to hand this over to Mauro because we want you to understand that HPE has a clear, defined roadmap, and we also have a number of technologies that are coming out that are going to further define our stance in the HCI marketplace. So Mauro, let's have it.
Thank you, Chuck. Hello, everybody. Yeah, we start with this slide just to explain what is going to happen with HCI inside HPE and what is our strategy for the future. You already know that we have more than one product inside the HCI portfolio, and today we are focusing on Simplivity, and we are focusing, as we just mentioned, more on the edge use case. You know that we have other products that are probably more specific or are more a good fit for other use cases, core data centers, and so on. But the important thing that we want to communicate is that there is a unique and single strategy behind this HCI product shaping. There will be single point of management for all the platforms that HPE is going to provide for HCI. We cannot share a lot of things today because this is going to be announced later in some months this summer, probably at Discover in Las Vegas. But the important thing is that there will be a cloud-based service able to manage all of these HCI platforms and able in the future to provide also data mobility between these available platforms. So let me jump to the next slide if it's working. Okay. And let's talk about Simplivity in detail, and let's start talking about the 4 key value points that we feel set Simplivity apart from the rest of the hyper-converged solutions. We took this approach to identify 4 main use cases that make Simplivity very different and very unique from the rest of the other solutions. You know that Simplivity's approach to hyperconvergence is led on how Simplivity handles the data. And basically, all data is stored in Simplivity, and when it's stored, is deduped, compressed, and optimized once and forever at inception. And this data that the first time that its Simplivity is then optimized is protected in full, starting from just only 2 nodes. In other words, Simplivity virtualizes the data, basically. And that virtualized data is fingerprinted. And that fingerprint is understood by all the resources within the Simplivity Federation. The Simplivity Federation is an organization, a group of Simplivity nodes and Simplivity clusters that you can have dispersed geographically, okay? In short, basically, we virtualize data and inception once and forever, locally and globally, and we will see more in the next slides. So what does this virtualized data bring to Simplivity that sets it apart from the other solutions? Basically, is the unique way Simplivity handle and store the data gives some advantages. And the most important ones are that the availability can start from just 2 nodes, that there is a built-in data protection with the native features with no additional license costs. There is a hyper efficiency that is reducing not only the amount of data that we store in the storage space, but also is going to reduce the amount of IOs needed to process data. And this includes the IOs needed for backup and restores. And probably the last one is the fact that there are built-in disaster recovery features that can be automated and enable very easily a disaster recovery plan between sites. So you see the title in this slide. Why Simplivity is special? Because it's very simple to use, is very efficient, is very powerful powerful for all of your applications, and is very, very hyper-converged, meaning that with just an appliance that includes storage, compute, and memory, you can basically have a data center in a box. And we believe, we mentioned it before, this is very special and unique for the edge. We believe that SimpliVity is unbeatable at the edge because with just 2 nodes, you can have a full high availability and a full set of data services for your applications. You can lose hard disks, you can lose one entire node, but with just 2 nodes, you have everything available. We mentioned that there are built-in backup and disaster recovery features that are native, and they can be enabled and they can work with a very little overhead on the infrastructure. And you can, as you know, backup and restore a very big virtual machine, even a 1 terabyte virtual machine, in less than 60 seconds. And you can automate these disaster recovery features, these replication features, with a software that is optional but is part of the SimpliVity portfolio called RapidDR. There is efficiency that is very important for the edge because it can reduce a lot the footprint in your data center, in your rack. You can have 2 SimpliVity nodes also in just 2 units because we have nodes with 1 unit, and we reduce the data with the dupe compression and optimization, but also we reduce the space in the data center. And SimpliVity is a sophisticated technology, but is very simple to manage. You can manage it from a plugin for the vCenter, and you can manage several sites, distributed sites from one single console. Okay, so very simple to use. Just the last thing to mention, SimpliVity only supports virtual machines and not bare metal, only supports VMware, and loves Kubernetes, loves containers. It provides a CSI container storage interface plugin to run all of your containers on top of this platform, and the containers are protected and, if you want, replicated as the virtual machines. So I think I'm giving back to you, Chuck.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so I just answered Brian's question in the chat in Q&A. So if you have anything else to add, Brian, it was about architecting the right solution. We did not mention this in the agenda, but Cloud Physics is a tool that's available to partners and distributors from HPE that allows you to get a real good insight as to what your customer's consuming. You'll need to install the VMware tools on the guest, but you'll get a good idea of what each guest is consuming as far as disk capacity. So you can make those predictions and properly design and architect your SimpliVity solution. So I'm going to jump into the 2-node high availability and going back to that edge concept and where we feel SimpliVity is extremely well positioned. So if we look at a typical set up for Simplivity, and we like to refer this to as a 2+1 configuration. And in this depiction, I have 2 nodes in the Washington, D.C. data center, and I have a 3rd node in the Chicago data center. And these 2 nodes can be connected together without a switch. They can be direct connected, and we can leverage gigabit Ethernet to send our VM data across. So very powerful. I can reduce significant costs by not adding a switch into this environment. So you see here, I have a number of VMs at the top, okay? And this layer here that we see as the presentation and the management layer, we like to refer to that as the DVP, the Data Virtualization Platform. And that's where Simplivity does that thing that Mauro mentions. We dedupe, compress, optimize once and forever the data that we consume inside of Simplivity. And that allows us to store only unique blocks on physical drive media. And those unique blocks are fingerprinted and understood throughout the cluster locally and throughout the federation globally. So if I have a block in Washington that has a fingerprint of, say, 1, 2, 3, 4, before sending data across the wire, I'm going to examine the Chicago data center to see if they have that block with fingerprint 1, 2, 3, 4. If they do have that block, I do not have to send it across the wire. I do not have to record it physically on disk. I just leverage what's already existing. And that really reduces what we like to refer to as the gravity of data. If I had to move or store fully hydrated data, I wouldn't see those 10-to-1 data efficiencies that Mauro was saying, right? So let's put some animation into this. What's happening inside of Simplivity? When I federate Simplivity, I connect all the nodes in my cluster, and they understand all the nodes inside of my federation. When I do backups inside of Simplivity, I leverage that data virtualization platform, and I leverage that unique data that's already on disk to do full backups of Simplivity. They're not copy on write or snapshot type backups. They are actually full backups. So I can go ahead and delete the virtual machine and still retain all the data necessary to restore that virtual machine. Simplivity also mirrors the data between 2 nodes. So if I have 2 nodes in a cluster, the data will be fully mirrored and persisted on physical disk. So I can lose a full node in Simplivity on a 2-node cluster and not have any data loss. In fact, when I move the virtual machines over to my other node, they will also have full data locality, which means all the data that's needed to run that VM will be in place on that second node. We further protect the drives from drive failure using hardware RAID inside of the node. So like Mauro mentioned, we can have a disk failure and a node failure in my environment and not have any data loss. So we have very strong HA capabilities in as little as 2 nodes. When I incorporate that 3rd node or that +1 node in another site like the Chicago data center, I can do remote backups. And now I have that 3-2-1 capability where I have 3 copies of my data, 1, 2, 3, on 2 different media sets and a 3rd remote backup. And that gives us not only the ability to protect my data locally, but to protect my data remotely as well. And if I architect my solution with enough compute and memory capacity, I can fail those virtual machines over to the Chicago data center and run my Washington, D.C. data center from there, okay? So when I do that remote backup, I send over a header that goes and examines the blocks on the Chicago data center to see if I have any blocks that are non-unique. Only those non-unique blocks get sent over the wire. So when we do a SimpliVity remote backup, we use very little data and we send very little data. And then I can recover that virtual machine over there using the existing blocks that already exist. So let's talk about data resiliency. And when I'm going to play this out a little bit, I have that array controller, that hardware RAID protecting my drives. I also have what we call RAIN, redundant array of independent nodes, protecting my physical node, so I can actually lose a node and lose drives in my environment and still maintain all the data I need all the blocks I need to run my virtual machines. You may notice I put some gray X's in here. When we move to the software-defined version of SimpliVity, we use RAID 5 technology to protect the drives. So in the future, one of the roadmap items is to reintroduce RAID 6 so I can maintain multiple disk failures, and that comes in really handy with the larger nodes. So stay tuned for that. And just a word about data localization. When we look at resiliency factor, and that's this node here, you may hear it as redundancy factor. When we look at SimpliVity, we have 2 full copies of the data spread across 2 nodes. And in other vendors, to get that level of resiliency, we may need as much as 5 nodes. Some vendors have 2-node capability built into their design as well. But remember, when SimpliVity fails the VM over, we have a full copy of that data. So we get very good performance across scale. So let's take a look at SimpliVity in action. And this use case comes to us from a company called BMT, and Mauro is going to describe what happened to these folks. And they really leverage SimpliVity's capability to expand their operations at the edge. So go ahead, Mauro.
Yeah, thank you, Chuck. This use case, success story, I would say, is very interesting because basically it explains most of the good things and good features that you can have, you can leverage with SimpliVity. Basically, BMT is a manufacturing group that had a lot of a big growth in the last years through acquisitions. So they acquired external companies, and of course this is good for the company, but it was added a lot of headaches to the IT staff. Why? Because basically they passed from a situation where they had to manage 1 or 2 different architectures, and they had a lot of experience in doing that. They passed to having to manage a lot of different infrastructures because they are now 25 sites. And other problems were that these sites are and were very different in terms of size. So they have 1 or 2 big sites that are the headquarters of the main companies with even 600 or 700 people, employees, but they also have some very small local remote branches, plants, and with 20 or 30 people. So the situation is very heterogeneous, and it's also very heterogeneous, sorry, also from architectural standpoint. In some cases, you just have to run 10 virtual machines. In other cases, you have hundreds of virtual machines, different applications, different requirements. With Simplivity, they solved all of these issues because basically they started small in the remote branches with one or just two nodes, and with the same technology, with the same product. And by the way, with the same management console, they covered also the requirements for the bigger sites. Okay, so it was a win-win for this customer, and the things that you should listen for to find, you know, a project, to find a deal where that has these similar characteristics. Are that you should search for customers and projects running an IT consolidation process, maybe after some acquisition, merger, and so on, multiple sites with different dispersed sites geographically, and customers that are looking to standardize their global IT infrastructure, to you know, to put some standard rules on these different architectures that are dispersed between sites that maybe can also have restricted bandwidth issues between them. Back to you, Chuck.
Yeah, I'm going to jump into the built-in data protection, and I'm going to speed it up a little bit because we're running a little late on time. So
as usual,
let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at that. So again, back to our 2+1 across multiple data centers. And I want to point out here that I also have a store once appliance built into the environment here. And that gives us the ability now to archive our data in a much cheaper platform, as well as add data immutability features to our backup. And when I grow out Simplivity, if I architect it correctly, I can move my VMs from site to site because I'm leveraging that already existing data. I can add nodes to sites. I can add remote sites to my federation, and I can grow and scale either through a spine and leaf or a mesh type architecture. I'm very flexible. And that store once appliance can be leveraged for all the nodes in the environment to give me that +1. I'm going to run through this. This kind of shows the data virtualization platform in motion. When I clone a VM, all the work is done at the DVP, and nothing is happening on physical disk. And the same thing happens when I do a backup. When I do a backup, all the work's done in the DVP, and nothing happens on the physical disk. And when I restore that backup, I basically just tell the data store that I'm recovering this backup, and I can recover it either to overwrite the existing VM or recover it with a new VM name. And the thing to realize here is we're not doing any IOs to perform these operations, okay? It's all happening within the DVP. When I do a remote backup, similar things happen, right? If I want to do a remote backup, or if I want to do a move of a virtual machine to a remote site, I send over a data map, and that data map examines the remote site to see the blocks of data that I need to send. And only the unique blocks will be sent over. And in this case, it's the purple and orange blocks. And those blocks get sent across the wire. And I leverage the existing blocks that are on my Tokyo data center, and I can move my VM in a very lightweight fashion. So this data protection capability has helped one of our customers in a Cryptolocker attack. And this use case comes to us from Central Federal Credit Union here in the US, and they were victims of a Cryptolocker attack. And Mauro's going to take you through this, what exactly happened.
Yeah, basically, it's a nightmare for all the IT admins inside companies and also inside banks like this. So they had a user, a front-end user that basically was using a Windows XP desktop and received a link. He clicked the link via email. He received the link, clicked, and it was a ransomware attack. At the beginning, it was not clear that it was a ransomware attack. So when the application, a specific application, started to have issues, the IT staff tried to, to copy 500 gigabyte from another location just to restore this application. But after that, they understood that it was a Cryptolocker attack. And with Simplivity, it was very simple to come out from this emergency, because basically they searched and found a recovery point in some hours before the attack happened, and they were able to restore very easily and very quickly, in terms of minutes, the entire application, included the database. So let's look what you should listen for in this kind of use cases and projects. There are for sure big opportunities inside these ransomware and Cryptolocker protection. So if you hear about customers that are looking to redesign their backup and recovery architecture to be in compliance, but also to be sure that they can restore very easily and very quickly from a ransomware attack or from a problem that can occur on an application, you should find these customers, and for sure they can be interested in Simplivity and in the Simplivity integration with StoreOnce for immutable copies. Back to you.
Okay, let's dive into hyper-efficient. And I think these slides really drive home what happens inside of Simplivity. So when we look at our Simplivity environment, we have the data virtualization platform, as well as our physical storage. And when we start consuming data inside of Simplivity, we capture it at the DVP layer, we examine it, and if it is unique data, we will dedupe it, compress it, and store it. And as our VMs are consuming data, this goes on and on. And then when we get to the point where we have non-unique data, we're aware of that at the DVP, and we don't record that physical block. So we actually save that IO. And it's impressive when we start to speed this up in real time and see we're consuming a number of blocks. We're actually recording those writes in the DVP. However, we're not persisting the writes down to the physical layer. Only the unique writes are being persisted. So what does that do for us? When we look at a traditional stack, we have a number of things in play, okay? We have the hosts reading and writing the application. We have snapshots going on. We have some sort of maybe remote mirror going to another array, either a synchronous or synchronous mirror. And then we have some sort of periodic read for our backups, okay? And we're going to send that off to another, maybe D to D appliance. So when we look at the overhead inside of a traditional stack and we compare it to SimpliVity, first off, all that overhead for backup reads goes away. And then for our remote mirror, that also goes away because that happens inherently inside of SimpliVity. Our snapshots get reduced significantly, and then as well as our application reads and writes. So when we compare SimpliVity and the I/O operations inside of SimpliVity to a traditional stack, we see a significant reduction in all of the I/Os, which improves our performance and gives us those great compaction ratios. And then when we look at that in the evolution of hyper-converged, a lot of companies are already doing the hyper-converged piece, right? We're collapsing compute and storage into one stack. SimpliVity took it the next step and collapsed that, including the backup, the need for WAN optimization, the need for an immutable backup target, and all that data protection software. We collapsed that further into a single stack. And we're going to explore that use case now in a company out of Japan that makes ice cream. And we all know, or maybe hopefully we all know, Haagen-Dazs ice cream. It's extremely powerful. And these folks were running SimpliVity in their environment, and they had some gaps. And Mauro's going to take us through the use case here for Haagen-Dazs Japan on how they use SimpliVity to fill some of those gaps.
Yeah, this use case, again, is very interesting, and we choose this use case because it's the proof of how SimpliVity is like a Swiss Army knife in the hands of the customer, because the initial requirement from this company was to improve the VDI performances. They already had a VDI environment, but the users were not happy with the performances, with the outcomes, let's say. And another problem was that the backup window was very long. So they used to start the backup job in Friday evening, but at Monday morning, the backup job was still running. So it was a problem. And they looked for SimpliVity, and they installed SimpliVity, and they achieved a backup window very reduced. It was about a few hours, and they solved the VDI problem. But then, while they were thinking about the outcomes, they thought that they can put another SimpliVity node in a remote branch they have in Osaka, and basically enable this disaster recovery plan between the two sites. And actually, in addition, they automated the entire process of disaster recovery using RapidDR. That is a software that automates the backup and disaster recovery plan for your organization. You can take tests, you can create a report for your audit offices. So let's see what you should listen for. Again, SimpliVity has is like a Swiss Army knife in your hands and in the hands of the customer. So you should look for some customers that maybe are already using SimpliVity for a particular use case and try to extend to other use cases, or customers that have several issues regarding the backup, regarding a particular application that doesn't perform very well. And last point, you should look at customers that maybe need and feels that they need an automated disaster recovery strategy, but until now they didn't implement it because it was too expensive or too complex. Back to you.
Okay, wrapping up here. Spend just a second on talking about adding store once into SimpliVity. When you add a store once appliance, it appears as a native backup target inside of SimpliVity. So just be aware of that. And then it also acts as a backup target for your edge sites as well as your core sites. And that gives us the ability to add that immutable backup feature as well. Mauro mentioned Rapid DR, and that allows us to automate our backup, our failover and recovery to our remote site. So let's jump into the roadmap because there's a couple things I want to point out here. When we look at the current column, these are things that we have already released inside of SimpliVity for version 4.1. And a couple of things to note out, and if we look across what's next and what's in the future, we're doing a lot of work around this self-upgrade, self-deploy, and the supportability functions, okay? So we're adding more integration, like for example, InfoSite will now have the hardware server integrations into the existing SimpliVity InfoSite. So further adding that AI capability for our infrastructure. And a thing to really get excited about is we're going to add that RAID 6 or that dual disk redundancy to the drives and the larger nodes in the SimpliVity appliances. Another thing, and we kind of alluded to this in the chat, we're going to have the ability to do storage expansions for the G nodes in a much simpler way. In the future, we're going to fully adopt Gen 11 for SimpliVity. So when Gen 11 comes out, SimpliVity is going to be ready, and that's going to give us the ability to support larger GPUs, as well as we're doing some larger disk drives inside of there to give us larger capacity. A couple other things to point out. For InfoSite or that automation capability, we're going to have enhanced case creation as well as wellness streaming. And you can see some of the things that we're doing here goes to some of those customer demands that we brought up in the beginning. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Angie, and she wants to wrap us up here. Thanks, Angie.
Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, Mauro. You know what? Yesterday I was watching a movie. Don't ask me which one because it was a Bollywood movie. I didn't think it's going to make sense to anybody. And in that, there was this guy whose crypto keys got stolen, and it had access to so much money and all that drama. And in my head, I was thinking all sorts of things. And today, when you were kind of mentioning that scenario, it was going through my head. So everything's connected. But yes, yeah. What a great presentation. Thank you so much, Chuck and Mauro. As always, I'm sure we'll have you as our presenters again, and we'll have more topics to discuss around SimpliVity. Chuck, like you said, there's so much interesting content, right, which can support our partners. So we will do more of these webinars, so keep an eye on that. And as I said in the beginning, this is being recorded, so we will make this available on Tech Data Channel Academy. Watch out for the email. We'll send it out to you with the link to access through Tech Data Channel Academy and all other SimpliVity content or other HPE content. So yeah, with that, I just want to make it a wrap now. Thank you very much for your time, Chuck. Thank you, Mauro. And if we don't have, I just also want to make sure that we've answered all the questions
I think we're up
Looks
to date
like.
on the questions, yes.
Yeah,
And thank you,
perfect.
Angie. Thank you for having us.
Thank you
Perfect.
very
And
much.
any other queries, please reach out to us. We will make sure that we'll let Chuck and Mauro answer any of your queries if it comes at a later point. But yes, have a lovely evening wherever you guys are in Europe and in UK. Thank you very much for your time, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.